The three Sindari warships tore through space like shadows, given terrible purpose. Their destination was Valen 3, a peaceful colony world where 2 million humans lived quiet lives among rolling green hills and gentle blue seas. They grew food there. They raised children. They had never harmed anyone. Councillor Keth had chosen this target precisely because of its innocence. Admiral Park Jinho pushed his fleet to maximum speed. The mathematics were cruel. His ships were faster. But the Sindari had a head start. They would reach Valen 3 6 hours before he could intercept. 6 hours was long enough to burn a world. Admiral, his communications officer called out, "I am receiving a message from the lead Sindari vessel. They are demanding we change course or be destroyed." Park did not slow down. "Tell them we decline. They say they will fire on civilian targets if we continue pursuit." Park felt cold fury rise in his chest, but his voice remained steady. "Tell them that if they harm one child on that world, there will be no force in the galaxy that can protect them from the consequences." The message was sent. The Sindari did not reply, but they also did not slow down. The hours crawled past. Admiral Park watched the distance between his fleet and the Sindari ship slowly shrink. He watched Valen 3 grow larger on his screens, a beautiful blue-green jewel spinning peacefully in the void. He prayed he would not be too late. 2 hours from the colony, the Sindari formation suddenly shifted. One ship broke away, accelerating toward the planet at reckless speed. The other two turned to face Park's approaching fleet. "They are trying to delay us," his tactical officer reported. "That single ship will reach the colony while we deal with the others." Park made his decision instantly. "All ships, weapons free. Disable those 2 vessels. Do not destroy them if possible, but stop them now." The battle was brief and brutal. Human ships had been designed for exactly this kind of engagement. Fast strikes against larger opponents. Concentrated fire from 6 vessels tore through the first Sindari warship's engines in seconds. The second tried to flee, but found itself surrounded. Both ships went dark, disabled but intact. "The third vessel has entered Valen 3's atmosphere," his officer reported. "It is descending toward the capital city. Full speed," Park ordered. "Everything we have." His flagship screamed into the atmosphere with fire trailing from its hull. The colonists below saw death descending from the sky. They saw the black shape of the Sindari ship dropping toward their homes. They saw its weapons charging, preparing to unleash devastation. And then they saw something else. Human warships, 5 of them, bursting through the clouds like avenging angels. The Sindari captain had one moment to realize his mistake, then focused fire from every human vessel, struck his ship simultaneously. The attack was precise. Surgical weapon systems died first. Engines followed. Control surfaces went next. The great black ship fell from the sky, not destroyed, but utterly helpless, crashing into empty fields far from the city. Park's fleet touched down around the wreckage like a closing fist. Marines in combat armor surrounded the downed vessel. They found 37 Sindari crew members inside, stunned and injured but alive. Every single one of them was taken prisoner. Every single one of them was given medical treatment. Every single one of them was offered food and water and treated with dignity. The colonists of Valen 3 emerged from their shelters to find their homes intact. Children who had been crying in fear now stared in wonder at the human soldiers who had saved them. Some of them asked why the bad aliens were being treated so kindly. A young Marine knelt down to answer, "Because that is who we are," she said simply. "We protect people, even people who tried to hurt us." The footage spread across the galaxy within hours. Every network carried it. Every species saw it. They saw Sindari warships attacking an innocent colony. They saw human vessels arriving just in time. They saw the battle Quick and decisive, and then they saw the aftermath. Human medics treating Sindari. Wounds human soldiers sharing their own rations with prisoners. Human officers addressing the captured crew with courtesy and respect. Counselor Maven Kath watched the footage in his private chambers. His form had become almost entirely unstable. Edges dissolving into formless shadow. Everything had gone wrong. His attack had been meant to show humanity as weak, as unable to protect their own. Instead, it showed them as strong and merciful. His ships had been meant to burn a world. Instead, they had been captured without losses. His message had been meant to break the human coalition. Instead, 17 more species announced their support. Within a day, High Arbiter Thiessen Var called an emergency council session. The assembly hall was packed once again, but this time the mood was different. Ambassador Yuna Siang took the speaking platform for the second time in as many months. Counselor Kath ordered an attack on a civilian colony, she said, her voice carrying through the silent hall. 2 million innocent people could have died. We stopped it. We captured the attackers. And we treated them with mercy. She looked across the assembly. We did not seek revenge. We did not destroy the ships that came to burn our homes. We saved their crews and gave them medical care. Her gaze found Kath's shifting form. This is who humanity is. This is who we have always been. We will not beg for our place among the stars. But we will not become monsters to keep it either. High Arbiter Thiessen. Vior rose slowly from his throne. The ancient Velothi had not made a personal statement in over 200 years. Every being in the hall fell silent. The council was built on noble principles, he said, his voice heavy with the weight of centuries. We were meant to preserve peace, to protect the weak, to give every species a voice. Somewhere along the way, we forgot these things. He turned to look at the Sindari delegation. Counselor Kath, you have brought shame upon this institution. You have violated the most sacred laws we possess. You have attacked innocents and endangered the peace of the galaxy. Kath's form flickered wildly. I was protecting the council's authority. You were protecting your own pride. And you have failed. Thiessen Var struck his staff against the floor. The Sindari Collective is hereby stripped of its council seat. Counselor Kath is banned from these halls for life. The charges against humanity are dismissed in their entirety. The roar of reaction nearly shook the ancient stones. But the High Arbiter was not finished. Humanity came to us 3 centuries ago as newcomers, uncertain of their place. Today they have reminded us what the galaxy should be. Not a place where the strong devour the weak, but a place where mercy is strength, where courage means protecting others, where one word spoken with conviction can echo across the stars. He turned to face Yuna Siang. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer humanity our apology and our thanks. Yuna bowed her head in acceptance. Later, much later, she returned to Earth. The celebrations had faded. The speeches had ended. The galaxy had moved on to new crises, new challenges, new hopes. She found herself walking through a park in Nairobi, enjoying the simple pleasure of Earth's own sun on her face. A young girl approached her, maybe 7 years old, with curious eyes and wild hair. Are you the lady who said no? Yuna smiled. I suppose I am. What did it mean? Yuna knelt down to meet the child's eyes. It meant that we will not abandon our friends. No matter what anyone threatens, it meant that we will not be ashamed of who we are, no matter how different others think we should be. And it meant that we will not become cruel, even to those who hate us. The girl considered this with the seriousness only children can manage. That sounds hard. It is. Yuna agreed. It is the hardest thing in the galaxy, but it is also the most important. She stood up and looked at the sky. Somewhere out there, the stars were listening, and for the first time in a long time, they liked what they heard. The weeks that followed humanity's one-word response shook the foundations of galactic civilization in public. The Council's ruling powers condemned Earth's defiance in private. Everything was falling apart. Ambassador Yuna Seong had not slept more than a few hours each night since that moment in the assembly hall. Her small office aboard the Dandelion had become a command center, filled with data streams and communication channels from across the galaxy. Every hour brought new developments. The Sundari Collective pushed for immediate sanctions, but the vote kept being delayed. 3 more species had publicly joined humanity's coalition. Bringing the number to 2040, others had sent private messages of support. Too afraid to speak openly, but unwilling to stay silent entirely, trade continued through unofficial routes. Human merchant ships changed their identification codes and flew under neutral flags. Friendly species looked the other way. Goods flowed despite every effort to stop them, and across the galactic networks, something remarkable was happening. The moment of Yuna's response had been recorded by thousands of observers. Someone had shared the footage. Then someone else had shared it again. Now it was everywhere. No. One word, spoken calmly, without fear or anger. One small human woman standing before the assembled might of the galaxy and refusing to bend. Young beings across hundreds of worlds watched it over and over. They shared it with friends. They discussed what it meant. For many of them, it was the first time they had seen anyone defy the Council. For some, it was the first time they realized defiance was possible. Counselor Maven Keth watched these developments with growing fury. His carefully constructed coalition was cracking. Species that had promised support were now finding excuses to delay. The narrative was slipping away from him. He needed to change the story. He needed to show the galaxy that humanity could be broken in his private chambers. He met with representatives from 3 militant species who shared his hatred of Earth. They were the Visari, warriors who lived for conquest. They were the Threx, who believed that strength was the only virtue, and they were the Scarith, ancient enemies of the Torvan, who resented humanity's protection of Torvan refugees. The Council will not act quickly enough, Keth told them. By the time they finish their deliberations, humanity's coalition will be too strong to challenge. What do you propose? The Visari commander asked. A blockade. Nothing official. Just 3 squadrons patrolling the main trade routes. Human ships will be stopped and searched. Any violation of Council mandates will be punished. The Council has not authorized this. The Council has not forbidden it either. The Threx representative showed her teeth in what might have been a smile. And if humanity resists, then we will have our proof that they are the aggressors everyone fears. The galaxy will see humans firing on peaceful patrol vessels. The coalition will collapse. The Scarith emissary clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. This could work. When do we begin? Immediately. Within 3 days. 9 warships took up positions along the primary human trade routes. They flew no national flags. They broadcast no identification. They simply waited. Admiral Park Jinho received word of the blockade while reviewing fleet deployments at the human station above. Vareth Prime, he was a patient man, a veteran of 40 years in space, but this news tested even his discipline. How many ships? He asked his tactical officer. 9 confirmed. Possibly more in reserve. Visari, Threx, and Scarith vessels. Firepower, roughly equal to our available forces in this sector. Park nodded slowly. And they are stopping human merchant ships. 3 have been stopped so far. Searched, delayed, but not harmed. They seem to be waiting for us to respond. Park understood immediately. This was a trap. If human warships attacked the blockade, the galaxy would see Earth as the aggressor. If they did nothing, Trade would strangle and the coalition would lose faith. He needed a third option. Move our fleet to intercept, he ordered. But weapons stay cold. I want shields up and engines ready. But not a single targeting system activated. His officers exchanged uncertain glances. Sir, if they fire on us, then we will defend ourselves, but we will not shoot first, not today. Not ever. The human fleet moved into position for 8 days. The two forces faced each other across the cold void. Neither side fired. Neither side retreated on the third day. A young Threx gunner made a mistake. His targeting system flickered active for just a moment. Admiral Park's ship detected it immediately. Weapons lock detected. His tactical officer reported. Tension in her voice. Hold position. Sir, they are targeting our bridge. I said hold. That gunner is probably terrified. Do not give him a reason to fire. The moment stretched into eternity. Then the Threx targeting system went dark. The gunner had stood down. The standoff continued on the 5th day. High Arbiter Thiessen Veal requested a private meeting with Ambassador Siong. They met in a small garden on Virith Prime. Far from listening devices and curious eyes, the ancient Velothi moved slowly among the alien flowers, his golden-veined skin catching the light of the strange sun. You know this blockade is not sanctioned by the Council, he said. I suspected as much. Councillor Keth has overreached. His allies grow impatient. If this continues much longer, they will act on their own. Una walked beside him. Why are you telling me this? Thiessen Veal was silent for a long moment. I have governed this council for 600 years. In that time, I have watched it consume species after species. They come to us hopeful. They accept our rules. They speak our elaborate words, and slowly, year by year, they are absorbed. Their cultures fade. Their identities dissolve. Until nothing remains but another cog in the great machine. He stopped and turned to face her. Humanity has done something no species has done in millennia. You have reminded the galaxy that another way is possible. That was not our intention. Perhaps not. But it is the result. The question now is whether you can survive the consequences. We will survive, Una said quietly. We always have. The Sindari will not accept this outcome peacefully. Keth is desperate. Desperate beings do dangerous things, as if summoned by his words. Una's communicator chimed. She answered it and listened to the urgent voice on the other end. Her face went pale. What is it? Thiessen Veal asked. Una closed the communicator slowly. 3 Sindari warships have broken from the blockade. They are heading for our colony on Valen 3. A civilian world, 2 million people, mostly families. The old Velothi closed his eyes. So it begins. Una was already moving toward the garden's exit. Admiral Park will intercept them. And then, she paused at the doorway. And then we will show the galaxy who humanity really is. She vanished into the corridor. Thiessen Veal stood alone among the alien flowers for the first time in centuries. He did not know what would happen next, and that, he realized, was the most terrifying thing of all. The Grand Assembly Hall had never been so crowded. Representatives from 412 species filled every platform, every balcony, every observation gallery. Some had traveled for weeks to witness this moment. They wanted to see humanity humiliated, or perhaps they wanted to see something else entirely. Ambassador Una Siong walked to the speaking platform with steady steps. She wore the formal black and silver of Earth's diplomatic corps. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back in a simple style. She carried no notes, no data tablets, no visual aids. Her hands were empty. Councillor Maven Keth watched her approach with visible satisfaction. His shadowy form had solidified into something almost regal, adorned with symbols of Sindari authority that pulsed with cold light. He had already prepared his response to whatever desperate plea humanity would offer. He had arguments, ready to counter any negotiation. He had allies positioned to support any sanctions. This was going to be his finest moment. High Arbiter Thiessen Vire struck his staff against the floor. The sound echoed through the sudden silence. This session reconvenes to hear humanity's response to the charges and ultimatum presented by the Sindari Collective and their allies. Ambassador Xiao, you may speak. Yuna took her place at the center of the speaking platform. She looked out across the assembled representatives. She saw the Sindari delegation leaning forward with anticipation. She saw the Velothi watching with their ancient, unreadable eyes. She saw the Marathi ambassador, representative of a species humanity had saved from extinction 30 years ago. Unable to meet her gaze, she saw young aides and old diplomats, predators and prey, oxygen breathers and methane dwellers, beings of flesh and beings of light. She saw fear and hope and curiosity and hatred. She saw the entire galaxy holding its breath, and she spoke one word: no. Then she stepped down from the platform for 3 heartbeats. Nothing happened. The silence was so complete that beings could hear their own blood pumping through their veins. Then chaos erupted. Counselor Keth's form destabilized, his edges blurring with shock and rage. What did she say? She said no. Someone replied, that cannot be the entire response. There must be more. Protocol demands elaboration, Ambassador. Xiang returned to the human delegation's platform and sat down calmly. She folded her hands in her lap. She waited. High Arbiter Thiessen Vio raised his staff for order. The noise subsided slowly. Reluctantly, Ambassador Xiang, the ancient Velothi said, his voice carefully neutral. Council protocol requires that responses to formal ultimatums include detailed explanations, legal justifications, and proposed alternatives. Your response appears to be incomplete. Yuna stood again. My response is complete. High Arbiter, more murmurs. Keth surged forward. This is an insult to the Council. An insult to 11,000 years of civilized discourse. Humanity cannot simply say no without explanation. And yet, Yuna replied quietly, we have. You must clarify your position. Must we? She let the question hang in the air. The ultimatum demanded that we abandon those who depend on us. We say no. It demanded that we erase our culture from the galaxy. We say no. It demanded that we surrender our voice, our vote, our right to stand as equals among the stars. We say no. She spread her hands. What further clarification is needed? Keth's form twisted with fury. This is not how things are done. Perhaps that is the problem, Yuna said. Perhaps things should be done differently. A ripple of reaction passed through the assembly. Some species recoiled from her words. Others leaned forward with sudden interest. The Marathi ambassador, who had avoided her eyes earlier, slowly raised his head. He was old. This Marathi, his scaled hide marked with the scars of the famine years when his people had been dying by the millions. Humanity had come. Then humanity had brought food and medicine and hope when no one else would help. He remembered slowly, painfully. He rose to his feet. Every eye turned to him. The Marathi sovereignty, he said, his voice rough with age and emotion, stands with humanity. Keth spun toward him. You were supposed to support the ultimatum. I was supposed to forget that humans saved my people. I find that I cannot. He moved from his platform to stand beside the human delegation. A shocked silence fell. Then another representative rose. She was Khaleesi, her crystalline body chiming softly as she moved. The Khaleesi Union originally supported the ultimatum, she announced. We withdraw that support. We stand with humanity. She joined the Marathi ambassador beside Yuna. More movement in the assembly. A Torvan observer, massive and armored, rose with a grinding of chitin. The Torvan Empire takes no official position. But I, Observer Gel, stand as an individual. Humanity protected Torvan refugees when our own government would not. I remember this then. 3 more species rose, then 5 more. Then a dozen beings who had been silent for centuries found their voices. Species who had accepted council dominance as inevitable suddenly saw another possibility. Yuna watched them come, one by one, to stand with humanity. She had hoped for this. She had not truly believed it would happen. But here they were. 17 species standing together. Council Akath's form had become almost entirely unstable, his edges flickering like a dying flame. "This changes nothing," he snarled. 17 species cannot stand against the might of the Council's core powers. Perhaps not. Yuna agreed. But yesterday, there was 0. Tomorrow there may be more. The day after, more still. How many species, Counselor, before your alliance begins to crack? She looked past him to High Arbiter Thiessen via. Humanity did not come to the stars seeking war. We came seeking friends, and we have found them. We will not abandon them, no matter what this council demands. The old Valathi had not moved throughout the chaos. His golden-veined face was as still as ancient stone, but something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been uncertainty or might have been respect. He struck his staff against the floor. This session is suspended for deliberation. The council will reconvene in 3 rotations to determine an appropriate response to this unprecedented situation. As the assembly began to disperse, Yuna allowed herself one small moment of triumph. Humanity had said no, and the galaxy had listened. The sun rose over Nairobi, painting the towers of United Nations Stellar Command in shades of gold and amber. Secretary General Amara Akanko stood at her window, watching the light spread across the city she loved. She had been a teacher once. Long ago, she had taught history to children who squirmed in their seats and dreamed of adventure among the stars. Now she held the fate of those stars in her hands. The Council's ultimatum has been verified, her aide announced from the doorway. Ambassador Siang's report is accurate in every detail. I never doubted her. Okonkwo replied without turning from the window. The Emergency Council is assembled in Chamber 1. Give me a moment. The aide withdrew. Okonkwo pressed her palm against the cool glass. Somewhere out there, past the blue sky and the burning sun, humanity's children lived on a dozen worlds. They had built homes and planted gardens and raised families. Under alien stars they had made friends with species that looked nothing like them. They had protected the weak and traded fairly and tried so hard to be good neighbors in a galaxy that did not always want them, and now the galaxy wanted them to disappear. She took a deep breath and went to face her council. Chamber 1 was a circular room lined with screens, each one showing the face of a different leader from across Earth's territories: military commanders, economic advisors, cultural ministers, representatives from every human colony. They all looked to her as she took her seat. You have all seen the ultimatum. Okonkwo began. I want options. General Maria Torres spoke first, her weathered face grim. Military response is not viable. The 5 powers arrayed against us command 3 times our fleet strength. If we fight, we lose. So we comply, suggested Minister Chun, his voice heavy with reluctance. If we comply, we die slowly instead of quickly. Torres shot back. They want us caged in our home system, dependent on their trade, unable to protect ourselves or anyone else. Within a century, humanity would be a footnote in galactic history. Ambassador Siang's face appeared on the main screen, transmitted across light years. Negotiation is possible, but limited. The Sindari and their allies have made these demands specifically because they believe we cannot refuse them. Any counteroffer we make will be seen as weakness, as an opening for further demands. Then what do you suggest? Ambassador Siang paused. There is someone here who has spent 40 years studying how the council communicates. I think you should hear what she has to say. Leonard, you should hear what she has to say. The screen shifted to show a small woman with silver hair and keen eyes behind simple glasses, Dr. Bei Sujin, chief xenolinguist for Earth's diplomatic corps. She had written 12 books on alien communication patterns. She had trained 3 generations of ambassadors, and she had never once spoken before emergency council. Dr. Bei Okonkwo said gently, "Please share your thoughts." The old woman adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat. "I have studied the Galactic Council's records for 4 decades. Thousands of ultimatums, thousands of responses. And I have noticed something interesting." She touched a control, and data began scrolling across the screens. When a species receives an ultimatum, they respond with an average of 4,200 words. They explain, they justify, they plead. They bargain, they use elaborate formal language. They reference ancient treaties and legal precedents. They try to show the council that they are reasonable, that they are willing to work within the system. She paused. They always lose. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The council's power rests on words, Dr. Bei continued. They drown their victims in language until they cannot breathe. Every word you speak gives them something to attack, something to twist, something to use against you. The more you say, the weaker you become. What alternative do we have? General Torres demanded. Dr. Bei smiled, and there was something fierce in that smile. Say less. Explain. Okonkwo said, in 11,000 years of council records, no species has ever responded to an ultimatum with fewer than 1,000 words. It is simply not done. The elaborate verbal rituals are considered essential to civilized discourse. She leaned forward. I propose that humanity responds with 1 word. Silence. Then everyone began talking at once. That is diplomatic suicide. The council will take it as an insult. We cannot just refuse to engage. They will see it as a declaration of war. Dr. Bei waited for the noise to die down. They will see it as something they have never encountered before. And that is precisely the point. She brought up new data on the screens. The council fears humanity. They fear our adaptability, our creativity, our refusal to accept the way things have always been done. They fear that we are unpredictable. Her eyes gleamed. I say we prove them right. Okonkwo raised her hand for silence. What word would you suggest? Dr. Bei. The linguist did not hesitate. No. More silence. Just no. Just no. No explanation, no justification, no elaboration. Simply, no. Minister Chun shook his head. The council will demand clarification. Let them demand. Every moment they spend confused is a moment they are not acting against us. General Torres frowned. And when they run out of patience, then we will see who stands with us. Many species resent the council's dominance. They stay silent because they believe resistance is impossible. If humanity shows that defiance is possible, others may find their courage. Ambassador Xiang's voice came through the link. Dr. Bei is right. I have seen it in the halls. Species that publicly condemn us privately admire us. They are waiting to see if anyone will ever say no to the council. Okonkwo looked around the chamber. She saw fear on some faces. She saw doubt on others. But she also saw something else. She saw the same stubborn fire that had carried humanity through ice ages and plagues and wars, and every other disaster that should have destroyed them. She saw the refusal to surrender that lived in human bones. Leave me, she said quietly. I need to think. One by one, the screens went dark. The advisors filed out of the chamber. Okonkwo sat alone in the silence. She thought about her students. Decades ago, their eyes bright with dreams, she thought about her grandmother, who has survived famines and revolutions, and still laughed every day until she died at 97. She thought about the first human to look up at the stars and wonder what was out there. Humanity had never been the strongest or the fastest or the smartest, but they had always been the most stubborn. They had always refused to disappear when the universe wanted them gone. She reached for the communication console. Her hand was steady. Her heart was calm. She recorded her message to Ambassador Xiong. It contained exactly one word when she finished. She sat back and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was waiting for humanity to beg for mercy. They were going to be disappointed. The Grand Assembly Hall on Vareth Prime stretched wider than any structure humans had ever built on Earth. Ambassador Yuna Xiong had walked these halls for 15 years. But today the ancient stones felt different beneath her feet. Today they felt like a trap. She took her place at the human delegation's platform, a small raised circle near the outer ring of the massive chamber. 400 species had sent representatives to this emergency session. Most of them watched her with expressions she could not read. The Velothi had faces like cracked marble, beautiful and cold. The Sindari looked like twisted shadows given form, their bodies shifting between solid and smoke. The Torvan resembled great armored beetles, their mandibles clicking in what might have been curiosity or hunger. Yuna kept her face calm. She had learned long ago that aliens studied human expressions the way scientists studied bacteria. Every twitch of her eye, every slight tension in her jaw told them something. Today she would tell them nothing. High Arbiter Thiessen Vio rose from his throne at the center of the chamber. He was Velothi, ancient beyond human understanding. His marble-like skin cracked with golden light that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. He had governed the council for 600 years. He had seen species rise and fall like waves against a shore. This emergency session has been called at the request of the Sindari Collective. His voice echoed through the hall without any visible amplification. The matter concerns the species known as humanity. Yuna felt the weight of 400 gazes shift toward her. She did not move. Counselor Maven Keth glided forward from the Sindari platform. His form solidified into something vaguely humanoid, though his face remained a swirling void of darkness with 2 points of cold blue light. Where I should be. For 300 years, humanity has been part of our galactic community, Keth began, his voice like wind through dead leaves. In that time, they have spread like a disease. Yuna's aide, a young man named Dowan, tensed beside her. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. Not yet. They call it trade, Keth continued. They call it cultural exchange. They call it protection. But we know what it truly is. He turned to face the assembly. Arms spread wide. Conquest. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some species nodded their agreement. Others remained still. We present formal charges against the human species, Keth declared. First, ecological contamination. Humans have introduced Earth-native plants to 3 colony worlds, disrupting natural ecosystems that existed for millions of years. Yuna knew this charge was absurd. The plants in question were food crops, given freely to species struggling with famine, but she said nothing. Second, cultural imperialism. Human music, human art, human stories have spread through our networks like a virus. Our youth abandon their own traditions to consume human entertainment. This charge was even more ridiculous. No one had forced anyone to listen to human music. Species chose it because they liked it, but still Yuna remained silent. Third, unauthorized military presence. Human warships patrol the Rim territories without council approval. They claim to protect refugee species from raiders. But who gave them this authority? Now Keth's voice rose with genuine anger. Who asked humanity to be the galaxy's protector? He turned to face Yuna directly. The Sindari Collective, supported by the Velothi Dominion, the Mrathi Sovereignty, the Kalesi Union, and the Torvan Empire, demands justice. 5 of the 12 ruling powers, nearly half the Council's military might. This had been planned for a long time. High Arbiter Thiessen Vior raised one marble hand. The charges have been heard. What remedy does the Sindari collective propose? Keth's form shifted, growing taller, more imposing. Humanity must surrender all outposts in the Rim territories immediately. They must recall every merchant vessel to their home system. They must delete all cultural exports from galactic networks. And they must accept permanent observer status with no voting rights. No voice in council affairs. The murmurs became a roar. Even species hostile to humanity seemed shocked by the severity. This was not justice. This was erasure. Furthermore, Keth added, his voice cutting through the noise, failure to comply within 10 standard rotations will be considered an act of war against the Council itself. Silence fell like a hammer. Una stood, every eye in the chamber fixed upon her. She was not tall. She was not physically imposing. She was a 53-year-old woman with gray streaking her black hair and lines around her eyes from years of difficult negotiations. But when she spoke, her voice carried. The human delegation requests a recess to consult with Earth. Keth made a sound that might have been laughter. Of course. Take your time, Ambassador. Consider your words carefully. They may be the last your species speaks in this chamber. High Arbiter Thyssen Vior inclined his ancient head. The Council grants 10 standard rotations. This session will reconvene at that time to hear humanity's response. He struck his staff against the floor. The sound echoed like thunder. This assembly is adjourned. Una walked from the chamber with measured steps. She did not hurry. She did not look back. Dowan followed close behind. His young face tight with barely contained emotion, they passed through corridors of polished stone, past fountains that flowed with liquid light, past gardens filled with plants from 100 worlds. Neither spoke until they reached the human diplomatic vessel. The ship was called the Dandelion, a name that aliens found strange and humans found perfect. Dandelions were weeds on Earth, small and stubborn and impossible to kill. They spread their seeds on the wind and grew wherever they landed. Una thought it was the perfect name for humanity's first diplomatic flagship. Inside, she finally allowed herself to breathe. Ambassador. Dowan burst out. This is outrageous. Those charges are lies. Everyone knows they are lies. Yes, Una agreed quietly. The Council cannot seriously expect us to accept these terms. No, Una said. They expect us to negotiate. She moved to the communication console. They expect us to plead and bargain and give away pieces of ourselves until there is nothing left. That is how the Council has always worked. That is how they broke the Mrathi, the Kalesi, a dozen other species before them. Then what do we do? Una began entering the encryption codes for a quantum link to Earth. We ask Earth what it wants to say. Dowan watched her work. What can Earth possibly say to this? Una paused. For a moment, her mask slipped. He saw exhaustion there, and anger. But also something else, something that looked almost like hope. I do not know, she admitted. But I know humanity. We have faced extinction before. We have faced enemies who wanted to erase us from existence. And somehow, we are still here. She finished the encryption sequence. Perhaps that is the only answer we need. The quantum link connected across impossible distances. Earth was listening. Una Seong began to speak. She told them everything, the charges, the ultimatum, the forces arrayed against them. She told them about the fear she had seen in friendly ambassadors, afraid to stand with humanity openly. She told them about the triumph in Counselor Keth's voice, the certainty that humanity would break, and she told them about the silence in the Great Hall. 400 species holding their breath, waiting to see what the young newcomers would do when she finished. She sat back and waited. Earth would need time to decide. The fate of humanity hung in the balance. But somehow, sitting in her small ship in orbit around an alien world, Eunice Young was not afraid. She had seen what humans could do when pushed against the wall. The galaxy was about to see it too.